Like there was there were some missed reps and some of the velocities were off.
No, that totally makes sense. Awesome. No, thanks for sharing that stuff.
Yeah.
So, one of the things that I wanted to get on as well is training on unstable surfaces versus training with unstable loads. So, I think a lot of the times those things aren't. Yeah, I think a lot of the times when people talk about unstable training, they don't necessarily differentiate between those two things, and I've always seen like a huge orthopedic benefit from doing some of that other stuff. So it's like, I guess I'll kind of classify it the way that I usually will frame the conversation around some of these activities is like, they're more so, it's not that they directly enhance your performance, it's that they do things that allow the activities that enhance your performance to be pushed at a very high output, right, while remaining relatively injury-free. And so I was wondering if you could kind of differentiate between unstable surfaces versus unstable loads, and then also just talking about potential implementation for strength athletes, whether it be powerlifters or strongmen. Those are probably the biggest cohorts that listen to the podcast.
Okay. Yeah. So unstable surfaces. What the unstable surface does is it does increase the chaos of the movement and increase movement variability, which is a good thing. However, one of the ways that it does it, and the reason why it's so great for rehabilitation, is that it causes it to occur at a slow pace. Right. So then, if you're just relearning how to walk, let's say that somebody had a stroke or some other sort of traumatic brain injury, and they're having to relearn how to walk. Well, every step that they're taking, there's a lot of shaking and movement that's going on, and we need to slow down some of that reaction type thing. Well, it needs to be introduced to make sure that the muscles turn on. It needs to be slowed down. Well, those unstable surfaces usually do that really, really well. You know, the AirX pad, the Dyna discs and things like that, they cause that increase in movement, and they also slow it down to where the joint and the musculature can catch back up, relearn how to use their proprioceptors, and then go on. Now, most of the people aren't using TBI. I was just trying to use that as a example. I'm sure that everybody has seen like stroke rehab, or videos of it online and watching the people. So I was just trying to recreate that memory. I'm not saying stroke patients would be using this. Maybe they are, maybe they're not. That's not my wheelhouse. But it does slow everything down so that the body can relearn how to use those proprioceptors. And it has that great movement variability, and so that makes it harder. So a lot of people like that. However, that increase in time, that's not a good thing, because that teaches the muscles that they can wait a little while to turn back on. Now, if you have 67 milliseconds for a ligament to rupture, and it takes 87 milliseconds for that muscle to contract, we're already in a 20 millisecond, and maybe it's microsecond. I don't remember right now off the top of my head. I should have looked that up, but I didn't know we were talking about it, so that's okay. If I'm off on the numbers, guys, I apologize. I don't really care, though. So we know that there's a deficit that's going to exist between the contraction time and the tear. Why then would we want to increase that? The unstable load. Let's actually, you know what? Let me ask this a little bit different way. Hey, Daniel, have you ever been to a basketball game?
Yes.
Okay. How many times have you seen people moving in the basketball game?
100%.
How many times have you seen the floor move in a basketball game?
0%.
Okay, now some of the other sports would be, if we talk about football and volleyball, they'll talk about, the grass sometimes, blah, blah, blah. Get out of here, man. We're talking about like a 0.001% occurrence. It doesn't happen that often. But my point is that the surface is stable, the environment is chaotic. Now, if we go with unstable loads, as far as a sport point of view, perspective, we know that if we can recreate that unstable environment on a stable surface, that's more of what sport really is. The contraction times happen more quickly and other. Now, for somebody who is a strength athlete, they're like, okay, well, that's well and great, but that doesn't really relate to me. Well, not yet. It does, actually. So if we look at there's a few studies that Mike Lawrence was involved with. He's up at the University of New England. He's a really good power lifter, and he's getting to be a good researcher up there as well. One of the things that he did was he looked at the unstable loads with the kettlebell and the bamboo bar, earthquake bar, whatever that it's currently trademarked as. And what they found was you would get the exact same muscle activation at 2/3 of the load with the unstable loads, right? So if you're normally benching 500 pounds for your sets, well, 2/3 of that would be, well, let's see, 340 pounds. Well, that's putting a lot less torque on the joint while the muscle is still getting the same work. So it's a great way to continue to work the muscle without damaging the body. I really like these for, I don't know how to explain it, but one of my old training partners and I, Dave Beversdorf, he swears that this extended his career by a few years, where we would go a dynamic effort day, a max effort day, and then a chaos day. He just called it a wobbly day. And that we were able to maintain training at high intensities, high loads, but without putting quite as much wear and tear on the tires, because we were both up. Shoot, he was in his 40s, I was in my 30s at that standpoint, or at that time point. So we, we're just getting what we could. But I really feel like Louis was right on that, man. The better that we got at it, the more our bench went up. Because it works all the stabilizer muscles in addition to the prime movers. Now, me bringing that up, the stabilizing musculature with the suspended kettlebells and the earthquake bar, there were times when the stabilizer musculature would be nearly double the activity of it was under the straight bar condition. So then that, to me, that's huge, because what is it that prevents the injury? Well, it's those small muscles, those proprioceptive muscles. It's not the big, the big rock, the main mover muscles. It's not the pec major and the triceps. It's those little tiny muscles that are stabilizing the shoulder, stabilizing the scapula, stabilizing the shoulder and elbow. I mean, holy cow, the biceps activation on the bench press and the unstable load was tremendous. And a lot of people don't, whenever they look at that, they thought it was just an error. I heard people, whenever I presented this in class one time, like, oh, it's just an error, it's a random error. I'm like, random error? What do you mean? They're like, well, the biceps flex the elbow. How do they stabilize the shoulder? It's like, dude, let's go back to anatomy. Where's the origin of the biceps brachii? Oh, the coracoid process? Where's the coracoid process on? It's your freaking scapula. Okay, great. Where's the long head origin? Oh, the supraglenoid tubercle. Did you just say glenoid? Oh, like glenoid fossa? Like the thing that's the scapula where the head of the humerus sits into? Yeah, the bicep is a major shoulder stabilizer. And I think that the moving away from the training of the biceps is what caused an increase in the slap tears over the past 20 years in strength and conditioning. So, there's no muscle that we've got that has no purpose. If you want to talk about a divine creator or evolution, either way, we don't have a lot of crap that's useless. Some people will argue for the appendix, but I mean, yeah, you can live without an appendix, but it's better to have one. So sorry for that soapbox. I'm feeling like Buddy Morris lately. Anytime anybody asks me a question, 20 minutes later, I